Yes. It's the chapter right before we have, for whatever reason, Mishima's hype, because we know he said that chapter 121 was like one of his favorite up and coming ones, and I thought it'd be more to do with like Ursa, but it looks like it's gonna do more with Irene and Celine, because I figured this chapter was gonna end up being more about Celine's backstory, but ended up being more about Eleftheria, but more so specifically about the Magia Dragon Guild and the start of the 100 Years quest, which is pretty cool. I found that to be very, very like suspecting. Again, I'm still part of the group that thinks that Eleftheria is hiding something. There's something that he's not giving us, and I don't know. I feel like he's got some like turn heel villain going on. We'll see. So far it's just been very small things. It hasn't been anything that's like very obvious. Nothing that's just like traitor in the midst. You know, like for instance, back with like when we didn't know anything about Mest, and he started making those really weird faces. It's like, okay, you know something's up. Whereas Eleftheria, it seems more about just certain small little context bits in his dialogue. Like for instance, last chapter, Celine is bringing up stuff about the the stuff she's done, how though she doesn't regret it, she know that it's it's still a horrendous thing that she's done, but part of it in this chapter is brought up how like the people that she killed pretty much were for the most part people that came after her. I imagine for the worlds that she destroyed, though, that's on Celine, but she's talking about it and she's bringing up stuff that like kind of like you really would only otherwise think about the certain sides, like what perspective you're seeing things from. And we know Natsu's been on a long kind of like not message, but kind of like the mindset since going into Alvarez in part 3 that dragons, though there are bad dragons, it's the same thing are bad humans. It's just a set of choice, because it's just as easy for a dragon to be a good guy as a person to be a nice guy, whereas like it's just easy for one of them to be a villain. But obviously a dragon dragon a little bit easier because power and magic immunity, that's just unfair, but you know what I mean when it comes to choice and mentality and stuff. But Celine is like even saying like the last chapter when she was being like, you know what, we're all kind of the same in that manner, humans and dragons. She even said in this chapter, and Eleftheria was really kind of like aggressive about it, and he seems very firm on like this get rid of the dragons, secure human stability and peace at all costs kind of thing. We see in this chapter. So in this chapter, like I said, we get more about Eleftheria in Magia Dragon. It's not even like him forming the guild. It's a little bit after, but it has more to do with the start of the 100 Years quest, and it looks like pretty much the collapse of his guild. So like chapter starts out, it's 100-something years in the past. You got Magia Dragon with all these dudes who are just hyped that now they have a guild. They seem to have the right attitude at the start. I mean, you mess with one person in a guild, you mess with the whole guild. They're bringing up stuff like witch hunts have died down, which is cool. I was going to say, what word was I going to say? I was going to say quite, I think, and I said like queet. I don't know. It's pretty quite cool because I like that we get little bits like that. Because I don't. This is actually true. I don't remember if we've had stuff about witch hunts before. I know obviously we've seen stuff, but I mean I don't remember if it's just been a direct witch hunt. I know there's been a lot of persecution of wizards and stuff, but like any documented like period of time, I don't remember if there was like, oh yeah, 10 years that this witch hunt's been going on or whatever, where it would fit in the timeline, or if it's just been something that's occurring. One of the dudes calls Eleftheria their boss, but he's like, you're supposed to call me master. We're a guild now. We aren't just a bunch of random wizards. We're in an organization. We're part of a structure and society. And this is where I think that Eleftheria gives a little bit of villain susness in this chapter. And it's just suspicious. And he's like saying how like you get to realize the true meaning behind this power called magic. And he seems oddly like, if you think about it, like for instance, Makarov at the very start of this series when he was talking about magic to the guild and how he didn't want the Magic Council to have all these rules that hold them back, that doesn't let their magic flourish and stuff. It seems more like if you compared him to Makarov is like, with magic, and, it goes with your lives. It's up to you and your choice, how you live with it, what you want to do with it and stuff. Eleftheria seems way more like, you have magic, you got to use that for others, you got to fall into society and use it to whatever way is necessary for that. Like he seems more almost like like for Makarov, it's like, you know, you're an individual. You still have your own stuff, your magic and everything, your life choices. Like that's all up to you and where you decide to take it. Whereas Eleftheria seems it's like he's not necessarily like fall in line, but it seems like he has this mindset of like if like the wizards have an obligation that they have to fulfill, like they have to do certain things for like the world and against society and stuff. And it makes me feel like that's some form of like villain origin story, because he's like, you know, this is the power bestowed upon us by the gods. You know, we don't want to use if we don't use our power for others, there is no future for us. I mean, there's a degree of that, but I mean, not really. I think the wizards are fine, because that's like, really, if the wizards just teamed up, the humans, like, well, they're all human. The non-magic people don't stand a chance. Even the, like in current day, where there are advanced levels of technology, you can include stuff like curses and spiritual arts. Even if you did, it's just like magic, how much magic there is, like all the different things that they can have, and obviously their numbers, they'd probably win, because I assume that any decent wizard is worth, you know, 10 to 20 regular soldiers. I guess it would just depend, obviously, power levels and stuff and what their abilities are. But yeah, he just seems a little bit suspicious to me, and because there's like a part after he says it where his guild seems a little flabbergasted, and he immediately be like, hey, look, there's a request from some random town that has a reward you have to go do, and it's not something like extravagant. It seems more like he's just trying to kind of like get them in the system. But again, it doesn't look evil or villainous. It just seems a little bit off. And I like that. I've thought that's been really cool about Eleftheria and 100 Years Quest. Because it's one of those things that we don't have as much with Fairy Tail in 100 Years Quest, is like when you think about series and when they still have, you know, large scale, all these different mysteries and characters you don't know about, but you know of them, but you haven't seen them yet. Those are all these things that are neat. And then it's like we don't have nearly as much in 100 Years Quest, because we have a lot of the larger scale answers in the series, or questions in the series already answered. And for here, we are getting new stuff, which is really cool. There's only certain things we still don't know about, but like pre 100 Years Quest. But I've been really liking all the little stuff that we've been getting that just adds again to that like overhead ceiling of things to Wasteland. Those plot lines where we're just kind of like waiting to see bloom and flourish. So he's just kind of like saying, he's, you know, okay, this is the basic stuff of the Wizard Guild. You know, they got quests. You go and you accept them, go help somebody out, and they give you money and money to your guild in exchange. And like saying, like, you know, one day they came across a dragon, cool looking dragon. It's a pretty standard looking one, but I like the horns. I think so, just like the way that like it's little bit of extra horn instead of it. At least it gives it a cool generic dragon look, where it's not literally just a big plain dragon with wings. Like I think the horns add a little bit to it. And then I thought it was funny that because the shading on the legs, people were saying like it was wearing pants. But these guys clearly didn't read the series. They don't know. They don't know anything, because they're like, oh, you know, they're surprised there's a dragon. They don't know what one is doing in Giltina, which, I mean, that part is like, okay, yeah, that's pretty quite crazy. But they're like, you know, their dragon's still here in Giltina. Kill it. We'll show them the power of magic. The dragon looks like he's smiling a little bit. It looks a little bit like he's just about to be like, you guys know that magic doesn't work on my kind. And then like the very next like page, there's a guy saying like, everybody that was with him ended up dying. Was this guy there? Let me see. I think that was the guy that said, does he have freckles? I think that's him. It looks like his hair. I'm guessing the guy that said that, you know, he's like, what are they doing in Ishkal? It kind of looks like him, kind of doesn't. He's got a little bit of the outfit. But Eleftheria is upset about it. Here's the thing about Eleftheria, because these guys, I'm fine with like the random people who probably never even encountered, you know, they've never encountered a dragon. Like, I'd be really surprised if they even ran across even a small dragon before this. But Eleftheria should have been like, hey, because like any quest should have to go through him. He is the guild master, and we actually see like the dragon poster on their guild board. All right, let me scroll up real fast. Or is that for the 100 Years Quest? I think that might be for the 100 Years Quest. But either way, like it. Even if he didn't know the first time, he should have been like the second time and been able to say something. Because if you are in this world and you are any form of decent high-level wizard, not really power levels, but just like knowledge, you should know magic does not work on dragons. Dragons are like the most legendary creature in the verse for like a species, not like a god or anything. So I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to look into it and find out that dragons are immune to magic. Like, it'd be like if, whatever, I'm trying to think of something really quick. Hundreds of years from now, if, historians looked back and they're like, why did these guys not go to war with each other all the time? And they're like, there's no mention of like nuclear warheads or anything of like, oh yeah, they had all these things to deter people or whatever. It's like, this should be common knowledge for this era. Like, well, for this area and time, but it's just like, for their world, dragons being immune to magic, I feel like should just be a baseline thing that you would know about. Not like everybody knows about, but like once you start actually like decently researching stuff, like you're like, oh, I'm actually going to become like not like a scholarly wizard, but like an aged and knowledgeable person enough. Like, I feel like once you get to a certain point, you should know it, because it's a dragon should just be something at some point you talk about. I think in a magic wizard world, it doesn't have to be like, hey, let's just have a conversation about dragons, but it's like you think at some point it would be a conversation piece between wizards, and unless there's like it was later, like this time, that they started recording that information. Maybe Elefseri is the one that did it. Who knows? But he's upset, and he's like saying how like pretty much nothing at the first part. There's just like people in his guild. They're like, all right, we're gonna try too. And then the dragons just is killing all of them. And then he's like, yeah, I learned about dragon slaying magic then. And then he went, I imagine, fought the dragon. One thing that's kind of cool is he's like saying that, we spent many years developing, mastering that magic. So that means that there were other dragon slayers in his guild at the time, which, again, would be really neat. This would be really neat. Mishima, you don't have to have 80 million people. But if I can get, like, 2 other really old dragon slayers, like, oh yeah, out of my whole guild, there are 2 of them still alive. But I haven't spoken to them because they quit the guild. They were, they didn't want to keep going. They wanted to live. They were mad they got turned into a dragon or something. Because I think that'd be really neat. Like, bad guy group, if he ends up being a villain, like, he's got his own little set of, like, some old dragon slayers. And then, it'd be cool because then they could turn into a dragon. Characters could fight him. And he's like, right when we were getting close or getting there, that's when the 6 dragon gods appeared. And Irene sounded much. She's like, oh, self-taught dragon slaying magic, that any enchantments, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty impressive feat. I think for Irene, like, I feel bad for Irene because it seems like, well, I mean, she was the first dragon slayer, but it feels like everybody after her just gets a better deal. But I mean, also on top of that, she didn't have. I feel like when it came to her, because obviously she would have no knowledge of what was coming, turning into a dragon to the degree and like how to fight it, that she just would not be prepared and prepped to. Or I feel like guys centuries later would have more at their disposal. Plus, I mean, she was going crazy and she was tortured and imprisoned, so I imagine her mental state was just not in the right zone for her to be able to overcome it. He just mentioned the dragon gods. Obviously the moon dragon god, Selene, got Ignia, Merphobia. One thing that's really neat in the Japanese one, and this could be wrong, it doesn't just call them the dragon gods. There's like a little extra thing. Like, I think it was like Ignia, they call him like the child of flames or something, but Viernes, they call him like a prodigy. It was really neat because Viernes, very potential Gold Owl connection. If he's like some really cool alchemist, that'd be badass. And it's like, if he's a prodigy, it's like, is he going to be like a master of magic? Is he going to have different types? Like, what if he has curses, magic, spiritual arts, alchemy, and he's just able to do multiple things? I think that'd be really cool. Because like with gold, because like when you look at the different dragon gods, you have like obviously Merphobia is a little easiest to look at because it's like water. He didn't do anything that crazy because he was out of, he didn't have his right state of mind. Ignia has all the fire dragon hacks, and then obviously like temperature and burning magic and whatnot. Alderaan was gigantic, had his own hacks as well. With Viernes with gold, I don't know. I feel like with it's gonna depend on what mission wants to do with gold powers, but I feel like gold by itself isn't too crazy when you compare him to some of the other ones. But I feel like you give him multiple abilities and stuff of literally just different power systems. That would really close the gap and make him obviously as like a real reason to understand, like, oh yeah, this guy's really threatening. He has every type of ability that he can do, and obviously be like if he specializes in magic. And I assume it's him that did the, if it is Viernes is the guild master, but I assume the guild master is the one that did human transmutation, brought somebody back to life. That's one of the things also just saying I'm super hyped about just to see how Mishima does it, because one, we know that they're temporary, I would assume, because they're not really alive. So it's like he could bring back a couple characters just real fast, and have some cool little bouts to them. I think would be really cool is if kind of like how you have God Serena and God Jill's rematch looking like it's gonna happen, I assume. but it'd be like you take a bunch of older characters that died, and you put them against characters that are just like really weird. Like imagine you put like I'm trying to think of something to be really neat, like Wendy versus like Blue Note, or well, Blue Note's not dead. I mean, you could argue, you could say like, oh yeah, Blue Note died from Natsu's attack, and then put him in there. But you know what I mean? Just like some really cool matchup, just to put him there. Like you know, if you had like Gray and he's fighting Margear again or something, well, maybe not Margear, but like maybe Wall or something. Well, it's like not human. That's a bad bad example. He's not human at all. But you know what I mean? Like just really cool like mixed matchup. So it's not going to be the one that you'd think. Like when Nineheart did the Historia, like imagine for instead of Easel that Wendy fought, it was Hades or something, or just something something you just wouldn't expect. I think that would be really cool. But you have again LF series. I just talking about all the people that have fallen, and like after he lost to Dogromag, he lost his heart, and he was like, I couldn't really fight anymore. So I started to entrust, I started to entrust stuff for the people in the future. I feel like when he's saying that he lost his strength to fight, I feel like that's bullshit. Because he lost his heart, yeah, but does that have anything to do with like weakening his power? Because we haven't seen Eleftheria do anything combat-wise, so it's really hard to say. And I don't remember anything, at least off the top of my head, about like losing a heart does anything for your power. I don't know. That's just something, again, really neat, but at the same time, it's Eleftheria just to me always seems like he's a little bit more suspicious every time he gives us some exposition. He's just explaining how the 10 year, it started out just a quest, became a 10 years quest, 20 years quest, 50 years quest, and now it's the 100 years quest. I like this like the little panel with Gildarts explaining that. I'm wondering if we're going to see any of these other characters. It's like, I'm assuming a lot, they're just, silhouettes with generic characters in the background, but one guy has a really cool staff. And then one character in the background looks like I assume it's a girl, has like ribbons or something. And I would assume any like little character detail like that could indicate maybe at least a character in the future. We'll see. It's like I'd like to believe that there's like one or two other people who have gone through the 100 Years quest and lived that have managed just to survive somehow. There's just stuff that are like, oh yeah, we have Fairy Tail that's sealed 2 of the 5 dragon gods, and the 3rd one is right in front of me. So if you count Selene and Dogromag, that's only Viernez and Ignia left. But because Selene is like saying like, rest assured, I'm already dead. I know what she's saying, because they're talking about like obviously the healing abilities of dragons. But one thing we find out this chapter is a wound inflicted by a dragon on another dragon will never heal. So that's really cool, because it explains obviously why they haven't been fighting, why they've been in hiding as well. And on top of that, it explains a lot of general stuff, like why Ignia and them didn't just go and fight Acnologia, why he didn't heal after he took that damage, why Acnologia's arm didn't come back. I think that's actually really cool, because that's something that we were never really given like hints on, because we didn't know too much about dragon regeneration. But this just means that like even if you somehow manage to hurt a dragon without using dragon slaying magic or dragon related abilities, they're going to regenerate and heal. So I thought that was just really neat, because it adds more to the dragon lore, and obviously it builds more into why dragons are why they were such a problem that you need dragon slaying magic. Because not only are they not going to be damaged, but if you somehow damage them, they can just regenerate. Like even like you somehow take out their heart, they will literally regrow an organ that will take place of your heart. I wonder about for Dogromag though, because Dogromag, I'm guessing with Dogromag, like when he took the heart, that's still like I'm trying to think, because with Eleftheria, the heart wasn't destroyed, it was just taken out. And his body didn't grow a new heart, it grew an organ that made up for the purpose of a heart. So it's kind of like not really regenerating in a way, but it's like his is like halfway, where it's like his physical body was damaged, but it didn't seem like tremendously. And then, because obviously like, having a puncture wound in your chest is different than a literal giant hole in your entire torso. I don't think Selene's gonna die. I'm guessing there's gonna be some way to fix her. She's saying that like even though that she's in this form, you don't see any wounds, that her wounds from Ignia eventually are gonna claim her. Again, I'm hoping that's not gonna be the case. We'll see. If Mishima does decide to kill her, I'm hoping that she'll stick around for a little bit and kind of just be like a character, the person in the chair, maybe helps the people get around with spatial magic and stuff, gives them some exposition on Viernez, because it seems she knows him, she knows at least stuff about him, which is really cool, because nobody else seems to know anything about Viernez. But yeah, I believe that she's gonna survive. And she has this really nice bit when she's talking about humans, and she's saying like it doesn't really matter if she's a dragon or a cat. She did what she had to do to survive, and she thinks humans are foolish. They're always trying to fight each other and trying to like stand above each other. There's a lot of violence and hate and stuff that they don't really they throw away a lot of their short life for stuff that Selene doesn't see as necessary, but at the same time they've flourished and done so well, and they've just been doing so well as a species. And she's like, for all their foolishness, they still love each other and dream of the future. And she's like, aren't we dragons the same? And again, Selene's had a lot of really great character moments, a lot of really good depth, and a lot of just bits that have expanded her character really well, and I've loved that. Mashima's done a great job with Selene. I feel like Selene, in a lot of ways, is not necessarily the same as like Irene, but I feel I feel like a lot of people understood like that last half of Alvarez, definitely the pacing was up. I personally think Mishima had to choose between August and Irene, and that's why the Irene fight got more focus, where August's fight seemed to skim. And then with Zeref and Acnologia, he chose Zeref, and that's why obviously we focused on Zeref stuff, and then Acnologia's felt so rushed. That's just to me personally when I think. And then I think with people like Igni and Selene, it's been like Mishima's kind of like, hey, I'll make it up for it for, what happened, having to rush a little bit at the end there. And because Selene, it's interesting that we're going to have interactions between her and Irene. There's just similar vibes to them. Not the same, but there's a degree that you can kind of like, you could tell that like these women would have one of those bits where they would be similar in nature, but because of that, they would cause friction and they wouldn't like each other as much. But there'd still be a level of that like not like deep respect, but at least enough of like recognition, I would assume. She's saying that it's this age then to decide the age of dragons is over. I want to live as a human and bring about this new age of humans. Hey, one second. I just want to say I love Selene. I'm sorry for her though. I am much more on Ignia's side when it comes to ushering in a new age of dragons. I would love to see like what that would do with the world and change things and just really stir up a lot of uncertainty. I think that would be great. But obviously Selene's been fond of humans. She's lived by them, and she's like obviously been able to understand them even in their faults. And again, I've liked that a lot about Selene. She's had a lot of really good depth. She's had a lot of displays of her understanding, a lot of sides to her. Both her crazy villainous side, but also her more compassionate understanding, as well as the sides to her that, again, feel human. Like when we have parts about her talking about Carnugi and stuff. Again, I'm wondering if we're going to get anything from her other children, because, again, Carnugi wasn't her son, it was one of her sons. And I assume she's got some daughters, but we'll see. At that point, we pretty much are just getting to the end of the chapter, wrapping up, and we see her just kind of hanging out outside in a kimono, just fanning. Because the last little bit before that, she's like saying how Igni and Viernes, they don't understand humans at all. They're not gonna be able to do anything positive for that world. That's why she wanted to get that weapon and take them out. I think that's really cool because like if Viernes is, as Selene says, because Selene being able to know, it makes a lot of sense. She has full capability of going anywhere she wants across the multiverse of Fairy Tail, across any dimension, any alternate reality, and just show. Like if she had the ability to somehow go to Rave Master and Eden Zero, I wouldn't be surprised. But she is obviously a knowledge of Viernes, because like for her, all she would probably have to do is probably just make a little portal, view him, bam, go to him, or just watch him. But she's obviously like still showing some of that vicious side, and the chapter goes towards its end where you have just some bits about her and Suzaku. I like their interaction. Suzaku's been, again, really amazing character. They've been the best in 100 Years Quest so far. Suzaku, it's actually kind of hard right now to say that Suzaku's still above Selene, because Selene the last couple chapters has been amazing. But they have a really nice bit because Suzaku's still like, obviously he's still got the little bit about like the fact he was part and assistant of killing and eating one of her sons. But I think Selene has a really good approach to it when she's like obviously being like, I've killed a lot of people too. I won't begrudge on my son's death on anyone. Plus he was a warrior. He fell in battle. And when he says like, it doesn't sound heartless, but I mean at the same time, that's one of those things I feel like that's a level of respect too from her. Because it's like, yeah, that's her son. Obviously, like, it'd be upsetting for her to a degree because dragons are different, obviously, than humans. But I mean, like, if he's a warrior, he's somebody who lives for battle and stuff. He falls in battle. That's just how it goes. Again, sad and unfortunate, but that's just the possibility of that kind of life. And then there's have some nice bits. Again, she's like saying it's like, yeah, but I at the same time, I feel him. I feel obviously he's within you. It's like I'm standing next to him. Again, that's really neat. I like this interaction and this relationship that's going on between Suzaku and Selene. Obviously, it's a little strange, like just in the context. He was there to kill and eat her son, but as a dragon, I feel like she just knows the ins and outs, and obviously of like the possibilities of it. It was, and at the same time, it really is a war between the two species from their mindsets, in the context of the 100 Years Quest, not in general. It used to be, but really, if you think about it from Selene's perspective as well, you could blame a lot of it on the dragon gods. The thing with Irene, though, that I really want to see if it is brought up, is if Selene's going to bring up her, like, the fact that she invented dragon slaying magic. Because if you, like I said, if you take Irene out of the story, no dragon slaying magic, the story falls apart. Which means that Selene should know, or at least be aware of, Irene is part of the reason for Acnologia. It's part of the reason that the dragon gods all had to go into hiding. It's part of the reason that Diablos is up. It was a domino effect that led to the death of her son and the life that she had to live. So I'm wondering if Irene is going to be, in there. I feel like it should be brought up, but like Irene shouldn't be held accountable because she's not Acnologia. She's not the one who did that. But she is able to see him or to see her, and she's like, I got one last thing I got to do before I die. It's like, I know you're there, and Suzaku's confused, and Irene's just like, oh, you can see me? Cool. I can't wait for that interaction. That's like one of the ones I've wanted to see the most since we got the whole Selene introduction and Irene just being attached to Wendy right now, because I knew that was going to be, that's like a legendary matchup. That would be like if I ever actually got to see Zero, Hades, and Mardigear ever actually meet up for some like Balam Alliance Guildmaster meet and greet or something really cool to sign the treaty or something. But like Irene and Selene is gonna be really cool. I can't wait to see where this goes in general. Like next chapter it's gonna be rough because like I feel like there's gonna obviously be like cool, like maybe some lore and information reveals, but like the dialogue, I know the dialogue between them is probably gonna want to, assuming there aren't gonna be like crazy big lore or like bombshells dropped in the next chapter. Assuming that, I am going to believe that we're going to get some of, like, again, the most interesting dialogue that we've gotten in a long time. These are two, again, also of the two of the biggest women in the verse. Two of the biggest women in the verse. One is the most powerful. One is the most story influential. And we're gonna get to see like what the back and forth is between them. Like, is it just gonna be a general conversation? Is it going to have to do with the weapon, the dragon gods? Is Irene going to ask about getting a new body? Maybe that could be the thing. Maybe Irene is going to, have something with Selene where they end up figuring out a way to heal Selene's body, but also to get Irene another one. I know people have the theory that Irene will take Selene's body. One, I don't think that could happen because Irene shouldn't be nearly as powerful as Selene. And if Selene, and two, if Selene was somehow so weakened that Irene could, why would Irene want a body that is severely damaged? Unless there's a way to heal her. I feel like there should be a way to heal her. If Wendy gets strong enough, I feel like she should be able to. Because I think it makes perfect sense if a wound that is caused by dragon abilities on a dragon is otherwise irreversible. I feel like healing from a dragon would be the only counter. Because like it should be the one of those things where it's like, oh, well, dragon healing abilities, they have that same apparent like rule break. Because it's like, oh, well, dragons will regenerate, not if the dragon attack. But it's like, oh, it won't regenerate unless it's from dragon healing. I think that should be the thing. Because personally, I think right now it's to set up some stuff in the story, but also it's going to put Selene in a spot where she can't just be OP dragon god that's like one-shot people all over the place. I'm just saying it will just kind of hold her down for a little bit, and then maybe she'll get back into full power later. If she does die, all I ask is Mishima gives her a really cool ending. That's it. That's all I ask for. We're already at a point where she's not an enemy, so I'm not going to get some, like, big main character cool defeat of her or something where she has like some like collapse like of her personality, some break where she's upset she's losing or whatever. I'm hoping that her defeat and her death is one that is memorable. But we'll see. Again, she could get fixed and healed. She could die a valiant death helping others. I think that'd be really cool if it's like something to defend against humans. Like imagine if it's like Ignia Viernes or somebody is doing whatever and it's like some big calamity and she goes to help humans and she dies in the process or something. So it's like after everything that she's done, she just makes one final effort to kind of, again, not make up for it, but to kind of get like that like last moment kind of just like a little nudge of like what would the people probably like have for appreciation. I don't know. It's hard to say. Either way, like I said, one of my favorite general concepts is like these two been Irene and Selene interacting, and we're gonna be getting the next chapter. So next chapter is easily one of the most hyped for me in 100 Years Quest. I'm trying to think of what ones were as hyped for me. I know obviously like when we were getting ready for like 5th gen Dragon Force, that was a huge one for me. And then when we were waiting to see who the dragon was in the whirlpool, because I know a lot of people thought it was Igneel. But other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button, subscribe button. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter. I really liked it. I thought it'd be more to do with Selene, but it had more to do with Magidragon and then Lobsaria. But it did have a lot with Selene's character, and I thought that was great. We got a lot of focus on Selene and a lot that really helped flesh her out more and give her more personality, give her more insight, and more side story. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button, subscribe it, like I said, and I really appreciate if you'd already subscribe. Messing up at the end. I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and I thank y'all for